It's not what you think. I'm not going crazy. I'm here. I can be present. I can be grounded. I am safe. Depersonalization derealization disorder is a mental illness that affects about 1% to 2% of the country. The symptoms themselves are actually experienced by over 50% of people in their lifetime, but the severity of the symptoms are what contribute to a diagnosis. I'm hoping with this video you and I will get a better understanding of how it affects people and how it works in the brain. I've done a ton of research and read a ton of studies that hopefully will help us understand this mental illness that most people are unaware of. I'm not a doctor or any kind of medical professional, so I may say terms wrong and or give information in this video that isn't 100% accurate on accident. Please seek help if you believe you may have this disorder. You do not have to suffer alone. The DSM-5 diagnostic criteria goes as follows. You must experience depersonalization and or derealization. Onset must not be contributed to any other disorder or outside agency. Patient must have a sense of reality and know their unreal experiences are not actually real. The disorder must cause significant distress and or social or occupational impairment. I was diagnosed with this disorder in 2020, but I started having symptoms in 2014 after a traumatic experience. You'll see a bunch of studies abbreviate it as DPDR, DDD, DPD, and more. It is believed DPDR disorder is brought on by trauma, and it's your brain's way of protecting you from the outside world. I thought I'd tell you how it personally feels before we get into the science. There are a few ways I can describe it. To put it simply as possible, it's almost like smoking weed and getting all the effects minus the high. A more detailed way of putting it is it feels like I'm trapped behind a glass wall. I have all these emotions and relationships and things happening and being thrown at this wall, and I can see them. I know they're there, but I can't touch them. I can't connect to them. That's what this disorder is. It's the disconnection between you and your environment and you and yourself. As of right now, there is no known cure or medication for DPDR disorder. Talk therapy, anxiety medication, and antidepressants are the main treatments. Some common symptoms of this disorder include, but are not limited to, feeling like you are outside of your own body. This can mean you feel like you're observing yourself or floating outside of your body. Feeling emotionally or physically numb. Not knowing if your memories are your own or not knowing if your memories are real. Feeling like you're in a dream or a movie. Feeling emotionally separated from people you care about. Distortions in time. This can mean you have no concept of time or are too aware of time. Object and distance distortion. This means you may have a hard time perceiving distance and objects may look weird. Some say the world looks 2D. Now that we have the symptoms out of the way, this first study is about that emotional disconnection and cardiac responses, but we won't be getting into the whole cardiac aspect of the study. Most of the times, if someone were to say, I can't feel anything, people would think they must be a sociopath or have no empathy or they're a narcissist or even more assumptions that are actually completely wrong in this instance. What the study from Germany that was done at the Department of Psychosomatic and Psychotherapy notes is that there is a great disconnect between our sense of self and bodily autonomy when it comes to depersonalization derealization disorder. Results from neuroimaging studies, though rare, show reduced activation of the insular and anterior cingulate cortex in response to adverse affective stimuli in DPD patients as compared to healthy controls. To put this in simple terms, the insular cortex is responsible for things like sensory processing and decision-making. The anterior cingulate cortex is responsible for emotional expression. When there's a reduced activation in these areas, you can find that people have trouble with emotional connection and even emotional facial affect. The way I describe this experience to people is, it's not that I don't feel anything. I know when I'm happy, I know when I'm sad, I know what I'm feeling most of the time, but I don't physically feel it. Therefore, there's some kind of disconnect. That's why when I get a present, I can be really excited and I love the gift, but my face shows otherwise. I look bored, or I look like I don't like the gift. Subconsciously, I'm so happy, but I don't know how to physically feel that feeling anymore. When you have such a hard time connecting, you tend to really overanalyze every feeling or thought or action that you do. This is why suicide attempts are so incredibly common with those who have DPDR disorder. The study done in 2008 on dissociative disorders and suicidality states that those with a dissociation disorder and BPD and/or PTSD are more likely to attempt suicide than those without the dissociation disorder present. This makes the MDs doing the study believe that there is a greater need for screenings for dissociation disorders in order to prevent suicide. Suicidal ideation isn't something I personally experience too often. Most of the time, my brain feels too foggy to connect strongly to that feeling that way. Speaking of how it physically feels, let's talk about that. I can only speak from experience, but for me personally, the physical sensation of constantly being dissociated is what bothers me most of the time. It feels like my brain is full of cotton. I've had this disorder for almost a decade, so I've learned to appear quite grounded even though I have this feeling of cotton in my brain. If you ask most of the people around me, they usually can't tell my head is in the clouds all the time. While masking this disorder has caused a lot of people to doubt how mentally painful this disorder is, it's also been my way of surviving. If I wasn't masking, I feel like I'd just be a shell of a human. I wouldn't speak, I wouldn't move, I wouldn't do anything. I'm constantly fighting to be at least 5% present in the world, which is why I'm often tired and just mentally drained. I think that mentally draining aspect is why psychosis is commonly found as a risk with this disorder. In a study done in Switzerland in 2020, it was found that patients who are clinically high risk for psychosis also experience DPDR symptoms. The study found that there may be a commonality between the way the brain is wired that connects DPDR symptoms with psychosis. The last study I want to mention is one done by BMC Psychiatry from 2016. I spoke a bit about the masking that happens with this disorder. It's a way of survival, but it's also something that makes this disorder invisible at times. To put into words the actual severity of this disorder, here is the conclusion of this study as stated by BMC Psychiatry. In consideration of the selection bias of this study, this case series supports the view that the course of the DDS, Depersonalization Disorder Syndrome, now known as Depersonalization Derealization Disorder, tends to be long-lasting. DDS patients are severely impaired, utilizing mental health care to a high degree, which nevertheless might not meet their treatment needs, as patients strongly opt for obtaining disorder-specific counseling. In view of the size of the problem, more research on the disorder, its course, and its optimal treatment is urgently required. This disorder can be extremely mentally painful and draining, but you are not alone. I am not alone. New studies are done every year, and I'm sure there will be treatments for this disorder in the future. I hope this deep dive into DPDR disorder helps you understand a little bit more about what 1% to 2% of the population is experiencing. If you think you may be experiencing this disorder, please seek the help you deserve. Thanks for watching.